Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 360. Thank you for joining me today. Got a really good podcast for you today. Got a lot of stuff to share. Looks like the shutdown is over. It's hilarious, man. I knew that this was going to happen the way that it happened. That there wouldn't be a deal worked out between both sides, and you have a majority of the Senate vote to pass a continuing resolution or even a budget. God forbid they pass a budget. But I knew it was going to happen this way, to where the Democrats, they end up caving, but they don't want to make it look like they cave. So they only needed 5 senators. There was 3 Democrats that have been voting with Republicans from the beginning. I think they voted something like almost 14, 15 times. And every time that they would vote, Rand Paul would vote no. So that's one in the Republican caucus that he was voting no every time. And then you had 3 Democrats voting with the other 52 Republicans. So that made 55 votes. So they needed 5 more, just needed 5 more Democrats to come over. And I knew they were going to do this. I knew that Chuck Schumer and the majority of the Democratic caucus, they vote no on it. And they make it look like those renegades, they went rogue. Those 5, they separated from the caucus, blame those 5. The only problem with blaming those 5 is that 2 of them are retiring. And the other 3 don't come up for re-election until 2028. Tim Kaine is one of them. They just swept Virginia. He doesn't come up for re-election. What I'm trying to tell you is that Chuck Schumer orchestrated all of this. He orchestrated everything to make it look like, oh, these 5 Democrats broke away from the caucus and went rogue, and the rest of us, we held firm and voted no. People, you got to be stupid if you believe that. You got to be stupid. Listen to me. The reason the Democrats caved, it's simple. It's simple. What did they want? What were their demands? Their demands were for more government. They wanted to increase the subsidies on the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare subsidies. That's expanding government. That's more government. Democrats love government. They're fighting for more government. And while they're shutting down the government. That don't make sense. They don't make sense. I was making the analogy that if Democrats were fish, government would be water. Democrats thrive on government. That's what Democrats love. They want government. They can't live with the government shut down. Just like I was saying, that Democrats are fish, government is water. And a fish can flop around outside of the water for a long time before it finally dies. But the natural habitat for the fish is in the water. The natural habitat for Democrats is government. They were fighting for government. They couldn't afford to have the government shut down. Of course they were going to cave. And we're in some serious issues here, people, and we're going to get back into what we've been talking about in the last podcast, our debt, $38 trillion. Not only is it $38 trillion at the rate that it is increasing, we're paying $1 trillion in interest on the debt annually. You can see that the debt, as it starts to rise here, this chart, again, is a chart of how fast the United States added $1 trillion to the national debt. In 1996, here, let's see, we can look right here and see what the national debt was. So you go to time machine and we're going to go 1996. Okay, we'll go 1990. 1990, the debt was $3 trillion. So 1996, it was probably here. Well, let's look and see what it was in 2000. 2000, $5 trillion. So 1990 to 2000, I guess just under $3 trillion in a decade. It took a decade to add $3 trillion. This chart starts in 1996. Probably say that national debt was probably, let's say $4 trillion. $4 trillion is $38 trillion today. $38 trillion today. So that's 1996 to 2026. That's 30 years. It's an average of $1 trillion a year. I don't know if I'm doing that math right. But anyway, this chart represents, every color represents the $1 trillion, and it's represented by how long it takes for the government to add $1 trillion to the national debt. Right now, we're adding $1 trillion to the national debt every 90 days. And you can see this started to climb around 2002. This is right after 9/11. This is when we begin the war on terrorism. This is when we begin this expansive foreign policy, but not only the expansive foreign policy, we create a new government agency, the Department of Homeland Security. That's billions of dollars. Then you have the housing crisis, and then we have COVID, the Great Recession. This is what this has done to the national debt, and that's why you're having all these debates in Congress about the budget and spending and austerity, because frankly, we can't afford it. We're in a lot of trouble right now. And a lot of this stems from our disastrous foreign policy, people. This is about foreign policy. And that's what this debate is about. And this backlash about Tucker Carlson interviewing Nick Fuentes, and all the debate about Israel's influence on our foreign policy. And because this is about foreign policy. This is a major issue within the Republican Party, and it has been for a long time, going back to the Tea Party. This didn't just pop out of nowhere. Everybody's saying that, oh, this is the result of Tucker Carlson interviewing Nick Fuentes. It's ridiculous. This has been an ongoing debate within the Republican Party for a long period of time, ever since the disastrous foreign policy of the Bush administration, which came after 9/11, and the idiotic invasion of Iraq. There was no purpose to invade Iraq. Invading Iraq actually destabilized the Middle East, because Iraq was a counterbalance to Iran. After the Islamic Revolution, immediately Iraq and Iran went to war, because the Ba'athist Party in Iraq were Sunni. The majority of the citizens in Iraq were Shia Muslims, and Saddam knew that the new Islamic regime in Iran was going to have the influence of most of his citizens there in Iraq. So he dealt harshly with the Shia, because the Shia and the Sunni have been fighting since the 8th century. So removing the Saddam away, that empowered Iran, because now all the Shia, which are the majority of Iraq, I mean, they're loyal to the Ayatollah. I mean, it was a no-brainer. But I digress. Let's get into some of these clips. This is Josh Hammer. Josh Hammer is one of the people who are criticizing Tucker Carlson, saying that Tucker Carlson shouldn't be. He's the one who wrote the article that said that Tucker Carlson needs to be neutralized. This guy, Josh Hammer, he is Jewish. He's on this program with another Jewish gentleman, and they are asking the question, why is this happening? Why is this rise in anti-Semitism? Because they call it all anti-Semitism. You can't question United States foreign policy or Israel's influence on our foreign policy or our relationship with Israel without it being anti-Semitic. So that's the question here to Josh. What is causing the rise in this anti-Semitism? Take a listen.
Is that I think that a lot of these younger millennial and then Gen Z MAGA supporters, Trump supporters, and so forth, there came of political age in the fallout of America's generally failed involvement on the world stage when it comes to things like Iraq and Afghanistan. And it has been all too easy for a lot of bad faith actors. I mentioned Dave Smith, he's one of them, but there are any number of others, Candace Owens. What they love to do is they all love to say that the reason that America got dragged into these conflicts is because of Israel. It's garbage. Right. It is a totally specious talking point, as I've told Dave Smith in both of our debates. Look at Ariel Sharon, who was the actual leader of the Israeli right in 2002 in the run-up to the Iraq invasion. He literally told George W. Bush, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, anyone who would listen, he said, don't do this. You're going to destabilize the region. You're going to just let Iran go in there and seize power, and he was exactly right.
But nobody needed to tell Colin Powell that, because Colin Powell was advising Bush that. Everyone knew that. It would have been stupid. And Colin Powell was the general that executed the Gulf War in Iraq before, and they decided not to go into Baghdad and remove Saddam for this exact reason. So Colin Powell was telling Bush that. So we didn't need Ariel Sharon to tell us that. And this is a narrative that they're coming out with now. Well, no, Israel had nothing to do with influencing Bush into going into Iraq. Actually, Ariel Sharon, who was the prime minister at that time, was telling Bush, no, don't do it. It's going to destabilize the Middle East, which, of course, it did destabilize the Middle East. But all of this happened in private. Ariel Sharon telling George Bush not to go into Iraq in private. And this is an article. Let's just read this first paragraph. MAGA right, passionately united in its condemnation of the Iraq war, but ultimately collapses when the topic turns to America's allegiance with Israel. One faction or one fiction, which by all indications includes one faction which by all indication includes President Donald Trump, sees Israel as a valuable asset and frontline ally fighting shared enemies on our behalf, so that Americans don't have to. That Israel's fighting that's the narrative. That's the foreign policy narrative. That Israel's fighting Islam, so we don't have to. So they're doing the dirty work for us. Is that what he says here? Others see something more sinister: a client state that takes Americans' military aid and then drags the United States into foreign wars. So. I'm not going to go into more of this article, but the author of the article is David Brogg, and we're going to talk about who David Brogg is here in just a moment. But he includes a clip of Tucker Carlson making this accusation in the article. Let's take a listen.
Within hours, the buildings were still burning. There were people in Washington discussing and pushing a war against Iraq, which I don't think any smart person ever believed had any connection to 9/11. There was a lot of reason to believe that having Saddam in power was probably good for the United States as a counterbalance against Iran, as the protector of millions of Christians. There are a lot of reasons that Saddam wasn't the worst, and certainly much better than what we got after. But nevertheless, at the behest of a foreign government, Israel, the United States began preparing for war against Iraq immediately.
And so Tucker Carlson makes the accusations. Many have made the accusations that it's at the behest of Israel. I'm not going to say at the behest of Israel, but we played the clip 2 podcasts ago of Benjamin Netanyahu here in the United States Congress testifying that Saddam Hussein had mobile labs, and that he had a nuclear program, and that he was developing nukes, and that invading Iraq was the right thing to do. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu was not prime minister at this time of Israel. It was Ariel Sharon. It was Sharon. But Benjamin Netanyahu was a former prime minister, and his testimony carried a lot of weight in 2002 when our Congress had to vote to authorize the war. He's here convincing members of Congress that they need to authorize the war. He's lying to members of Congress who ultimately authorized that war. Many in the Senate said they regret their vote for that war. You also had Joe Biden, who was the head of the Foreign Intelligence Committee, who also rallied a lot of support for Democrats to vote for. Now, all the Republicans voted in the Senate. All the Republicans voted to authorize the war. But there was a faction of Democrats that didn't. And they saw the same intelligence. There's about 22 Democrats that didn't vote to authorize the war. And they saw the same intelligence that the 20 or so Democrats that did authorize, that did authorize the war. So everybody saw the same intelligence, but there was a faction of Democrats, about 22 or so, and one Republican as well. One Republican voted to not authorize the war. They also have the same intelligence. This guy may have pushed some of them over the hump. Benjamin Netanyahu, former prime minister of Israel, talking about the mobile labs and centrifuges and all this stuff that was not true. Saddam did not have a nuclear program. But then they say, well, Sharon, who was the actual prime minister, he was privately telling Bush, no, don't do this. You're going to destabilize the Middle East. Now, who's this guy, David Bragg? Let's talk about him. David Bragg, this is his Wikipedia page. David Bragg is former executive director of Christians United for Israel, CUFI. CUFI, remember, is Pastor Hagee's church there, or Pastor Hagee's organization, CUFI. David Bragg is former executive director of Christians United for Israel, CUFI, an American pro-Israel Christian organization, and a conservative activist. Let's read a little bit more about Mr. Bragg here. After graduating Harvard Law, Bragg served as an executive at American Online. I don't know if that's AOL, but it says America Online, and practiced corporate law both in Israel and in the United States. In the early 1990s, Bragg practiced in Israel. Afterwards, he worked in the United States Senate for several years, where he eventually became the chief of staff to Arlen Specter. Who's Arlen Specter, people? Arlen Specter was the lawyer in the Warren Commission. This guy created the single bullet theory. The single bullet theory, where the bullet went through John Kennedy's neck and then hit Conley in the arm and in the leg and took a left turn and all that stuff. That was the work of Arlen Specter. So Mr. Bragg was the chief of staff to Arlen Specter. Bragg is often considered a protege of American philanthropist Miriam and Sheldon Adelson. Miriam Adelson. Sheldon Adelson. He's a protege of them, Bragg. So he's the one who wrote this article. What's the date on this article? November 5th. So that's just last week, 2025, that it was despite Israel, not because of Israel. Israel repeatedly warned Bush privately that invading Iraq would be a disaster. So that's kind of like to counterbalance Benjamin Netanyahu, former prime minister, over here testifying to Congress. You got to authorize this thing because Saddam's got nukes. I found this article from 2015, and it's making the case that Bibi versus Sharon, that Bibi it was over here testifying to our Congress to authorize it, but Sharon was privately telling Bush, don't do it because it's going to destabilize the Middle East. That, a child would have known that. But if you ask AI, you ask Google AI, did Ariel Sharon oppose the Iraq war? This is what you get. Ariel Sharon did not oppose the Iraq war. Rather, he was a staunch ally of the United States and expressed support for the U.S. campaign to remove Saddam Hussein. Public support. As Prime Minister of Israel at the time of the 2003 invasion, Sharon publicly hailed the war and congratulated President Bush on his fight against terrorism. So Sharon and Netanyahu, they were on the same side. And there's many sources for this answer in Google AI. This is one of the sources, an article from March of 2003. This is March 2003. This is just, I think we dropped the first bombs on the 19th. This is March 21st, 2003, 2 days after we dropped the first bombs. Baltimore Sun, 2003, Sharon hails Iraq war, urges Israel to be calm. Tel Aviv, Israel. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon hailed the United States-led war in Iraq as the beginning of a new era. Sharon, end quote, a new era in the Middle East yesterday, but also tried to calm public nerves about possible missile strikes by Iraq leader Saddam Hussein. So Sharon, maybe they try to tell me that in private that he was telling Bush, don't do this, but publicly he's hailing it. And then you got one of your former prime ministers over here testifying to Congress to approve it. No, that dog don't hunt, Josh Hammer, at all. I want you to listen to more of this.
Of our debates, look at Ariel Sharon, who was the actual leader of the Israeli right in 2002 in the run-up to the Iraq invasion. He literally told George W. Bush, Condoleezza Rice, anyone who would listen, he said, don't do this. You're going to destabilize the region. You're going to just let Iran go in there and seize power. And he was exactly right. So
I've never heard that said.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I wonder why.
No, it's a garbage talking point, but they've been pretty successful at getting it out there, and I still see that messaging come
because it's true.
The Tucker Carlsons of the world, from a lot of these bad faith actors on the so-called right. So that is one. Another thing that comes to mind is this is a problem in a lot of diaspora Jewry, but I think the problem is particularly pronounced in the United States. There is a long time cultural and political left-wing slant to American Jewry, even more so than most other diaspora communities, probably Australia, Canada, the UK, many of which have historically left the center bent. America is historically pretty lopsided. Now, the good news is that's changing. That's changing.
So let me tell you what he's saying here, because he's answering the question. The host of this podcast asked him, what's bringing about, all of this rise in anti-Semitism and rise of, and he says, first of all, they think that we are, the nation of Israel is influencing this disastrous foreign policy. And he admits that it's a disastrous foreign policy. And then he gets into a second reason here. He says the second reason is because this is happening on the right. And the second reason is because many of the jury here in United States, they vote for Democrats. They're liberals. Like he says, like 70% of them are liberals. So that would, also, garners some resentment from those on the right, because 70% of the Jews vote for Democrats. That's what he's basically saying.
In the United States, there is a long time cultural and political left-wing slant to American Jewry, even more so than most other diaspora communities, probably Australia, Canada, the UK, many of which have historically left the center bent. America is historically pretty lopsided. Now, the good news is that's changing. That's changing as the Democratic Party becomes an anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist monstrosity, and as religious, traditional Orthodox Jews in the U.S. have much bigger families, and a lot of the non-Orthodox Jews, tragically, are actually intermarrying. So the demographics and the politics are starting to change a little bit, but as of today, that still is the trend. So I think a lot of younger MAGA will sometimes fall into this trap of watching these influencers talk about how, XYZ left-wing Jew was responsible for the evils of feminism, pornography, all this various stuff there. And then they'll also see that Jews vote for Democrats on these presidential elections by something like a 70-30 margin. They ask, well, what am I benefiting from this there? I mean, if they're not going to vote for us there. So that's at least part of it as well. But here is the biggest reason. I think the biggest reason for the rise of this rot, and let's call it what it is absolutely a rot, is I can go back at least as far as the 2016 presidential election with the Russiagate hoax, which was this lie that Donald Trump was a Vladimir Putin puppet, a Manchurian candidate, that then launched the Mueller probe to swallow up 2+ years of the Trump presidency. From Russiagate to the COVID-19 pandemic, where they said that if you were a religious Jew, you couldn't go to shul for a minyan in Brooklyn, but if you were a Black Lives Matter protester, you could go for a public health dispensation. Then there was the 2020 election with all the shenanigans with the Hunter Biden laptop.
You go to clubs also too. You could go to
I want to explain what he's saying now. So this is his third reason. So first reason, he says, the question is, why is this happening? Why is it happening that on the right there's a rise in anti-Semitism, is what they're calling it, and he's given three answers. He says the first reason that this is happening is because there's this false accusation that Israel is influencing our foreign policy, the disastrous foreign policy in the Middle East that has driven up our debt and, left us in this fiscal bind that we're in. Number two, he says, because Jews predominantly vote for Democrats. And three, he says that right now, because of everything that's happened since COVID, since the Russiagate, from all these different conspiracies and things that have made people more distrusting of institutions, distrusting of anything that's coming out of the government. I mean, honestly, you don't need any more evidence of lobbying for foreign policy than Benjamin Netanyahu here in our Congress in 2002, sitting there testifying and actually lobbying for our invasion of Iraq. You don't have to say that it's AIPAC or KUFI or any other groups. This is Benjamin Netanyahu sitting in a chair testifying to our Congress that you need to authorize this war because he is lobbying for the war. So these are Josh Hammer's three reasons that Democrats, that this is happening. This is the rise. Why this is rising in the Republican Party is because Israel is influencing our foreign policy. The majority of Democrats the majority of Jews votes for Democrats. And three, because of the distrust that has risen up in the Republican Party because of COVID and Russiagate and all this stuff is making people blame Jews. So that's what Hammer says. Back to Iraq. I want to play this clip. This is Ben Shapiro, and he was on with Dana Loesch. And I want you to pay attention to what he says here. Something very interesting, because he gives another reason. He says that, which is also the reason that I've given. I don't know that I agree with Josh Hammer and the three reasons that he gave, but I do agree with Ben Shapiro here. And a lot of it has to do with grievance because of people, the young Republicans and those who have who are listening to Nick Fuentes, for example. They can't afford homes. Everything's more expensive. Affordability is a huge issue on the left, but also a huge issue on the right. And there's a lot of grievance because people can't have families. They can't, their access into the American dream is a lot more difficult than their parents and their grandparents. And a lot of that they blame on these issues with like what Josh Hammer was talking about as far as our foreign policy and a lot of the domestic policy, immigration as well. They attribute to this, but this is the point that Ben Shapiro is making here. He's blaming it on grievance, and that's why the rise in anti-Semitism on the right is because of grievance. And this is his answer. I want you to listen to this. I just thought this was so crazy.
And when we hear this kind of constant grievance mongering and the accentuation of grievance among young men, you're doing a disservice to young men. The way that young men are going to get ahead in America is the same way that I got ahead as a young man, which is to work really, really hard and do a lot of really hard jobs. And
work really, really hard. He's saying you guys aren't working hard enough. That's why you can't afford homes. That's what he says.
Are going to get ahead in America is the same way that I got ahead as a young man, which is to work really, really hard and do a lot of really hard jobs. And then eventually you will succeed. If you make good decisions, you will succeed. And there's this kind of benighted idea that has set in. And I think it's ugly and it's bad. And you see it on both sides of the aisle, predominantly the left, but you're now seeing it on the right as well, that actually everybody is a victim. That if you're not as successful as you want to be, that's because there is somebody standing in your way, some conspiratorial coterie of people who are standing in your way. There's nothing more enervating and stupid than that in the United States of America. These are all college students who are all going to have a shot in the job market. They're going to have a shot at getting married. They will have a shot at buying a home once they get married and actually get a job and work for a few years if they make the right decisions. And instead you have people feeding them the line that the best way for them to address their life is through disliking women. I mean, you hear that. I mean, Tucker Carlson.
So he says that they are going to be able to buy a home. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to ever own it, but they can get one of those 50-year mortgages that Trump just dropped. 50-year mortgage. You say, I mean, it's just, that's just grasping at straws. Grasping at straws. Because this is a huge problem. And no, many of them are not going to be able to buy a home, Ben, because there's so many immigrants driving up the prices of homes. But I love this part right here. Take a listen.
Everybody is a victim. That if you're not as successful as you want to be, that's because there is somebody standing in your way, some conspiratorial coterie of people who are standing in your way.
Some conspiratorial coterie of people standing in your way. Like there is, you know, a shadowy group meeting in dark rooms talking about how they're going to lie us into the war in Iraq. I'm going to bring this back to the war in Iraq. I just thought that was it. Like there's no deep state. There's no cabal. There's no secret group guiding foreign policy. Well, who's this group right here? Who's this group? The Office of Special Plans. Who's the Office of Special Plans? As we're talking about the build up to the war in Iraq. We not only have Ariel Sharon hailing the a war in Iraq, saying how it's gonna, you know, he's gonna, what does he say here? Fight terrorism. What does he say? Beginning a new era in the Middle East. That's what Ariel Sharon said. You got Benjamin Netanyahu testifying in Congress, lying to Congress about mobile labs, centrifuges, and all this stuff, telling them to vote for the war. And then you have the Office of Special Plans. What's the Office of Special Plans? The Office of Special Plans, which existed from September 2002 to June 2003, was a Pentagon unit created by Paul Wolfowitz and Douglas Feith. Who's Paul Wolfowitz? Paul Wolfowitz is a Jew. Douglas Feith is a Jew. Both of these guys are Jew. And they created this office, the Office of Special Plans in the Pentagon, starting in September 2. And headed by Doug Feith. Doug Feith headed the group. And look, I'm not being anti-Semitic when I point out that Paul Wolfowitz and Douglas Feith are both Jews, and they both created the Pentagon unit, the Office of Special Plans. And the Office of Special Plans was charged by the United States Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. He let this group meet in private in the Pentagon. What this group did, this shadowy group who Ben Shapiro is saying there's no such thing as this shadowy group. You're being conspiratorial. This isn't happening. You're just not working hard enough. That's what he said. It doesn't exist right here. Office of Special Plans, created by Paul Wolfowitz and Douglas Feith. Don Rumsfeld let this go on in the Pentagon as they're building up to the war in Iraq. And the mission of the Office of Special Plan was to supply senior George Bush administration officials with raw intelligence, unvetted by the intelligence agencies, stovepiping pertaining to Iraq. A similar unit called the Iranian, because Iran's next. They want to go to Iran next. Dictatoriate was created several years later in 2006. A private group in the Pentagon creating grabbing raw intelligence, intelligence that hasn't been vetted. That some of the intelligence that has been vetted, the analysts that are vetting it are telling you that no, this is bad intelligence, it's wrong, and they're still feeding it to policymakers. The yellow cake uranium from Niger. The CIA, the analysts were telling them this is BS. And the Office of Special Plans, which was created by Paul Wolfowitz and Douglas Feith, were still feeding the yellow cake uranium lie to policymakers to sell the war in Iraq. And you're telling me that there are no secret groups, secret cabals guiding our foreign policies. In an interview with the Scottish Sunday Herald, former intelligence agency officer Larry C. Johnson said that the OSP, Office of Special Plans, was a dangerous U.S. national security and a threat to world peace. The OSP lied and manipulated intelligence to further the agenda of removing Saddam Hussein. So you not only have Benjamin Netanyahu here lying to our Congress, to get them to authorize the war. You have Sharon, the prime minister, there praising the war. And then you have two Jewish Americans starting a special unit in the Pentagon, secret unit that is manipulating intelligence, feeding it to policymakers. But no, the Jews don't have any influence over our foreign policy. This is Lawrence Wilkerson. Lawrence Wilkerson. That's who this is. And Lawrence Wilkerson, who is he? Lawrence Wilkerson is a retired U.S. Army colonel. And he was chief of staff to Colin Powell in 2002. Colin Powell was the Secretary of State. Lawrence Wilkerson was the chief of staff to the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, as the buildup of the war. Since the end of his military career, Wilkerson has criticized many aspects of the Iraq War, including his own preparation of Colin Powell's presentation to the Security Council. I want you to listen to what Wilkerson says here.
I watched Mossad take over the Pentagon. In 2002, the Pentagon was infiltrated by Mossad. They did not need any identification to get through the river entrance of the building. They went upstairs to Douglas Feith, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the third most powerful man in the Defense Department.
So Mossad was meeting with the guy who created the Office of Special Plans, which was creating false intelligence, unvetted intelligence, lies to go to policymakers. Mossad was meeting with Douglas Feith, is what the chief of staff to Colin Powell, to the Secretary of State. That's what he says here. But they're trying to tell you that no, Israel doesn't have any influence on your foreign policy. No, they didn't have anything to do with the Iraq war. Ariel Sharon was actually privately telling Bush, no, don't do it. Don't do it. You're going to destabilize the Middle East.
Yes, I watched Mossad take over the Pentagon. In 2002, the Pentagon was infiltrated by Mossad. They did not need any identification to get through the river entrance of the building. They went upstairs to Douglas Feith, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the third most powerful man in the Defense Department. Occasionally, they went to the second most powerful man, Paul Wolfowitz, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and they had run of the Pentagon.
So they were meeting with Paul Wolfowitz and Douglas Feith. Douglas Feith and Paul Wolfowitz created this secret unit in the Pentagon, the Office of Special Plans. The Office of Special Plans was feeding bogus intelligence to the policymakers, but no Jews have any influence on our foreign policy. Now, am I being anti-Semitic by telling you this? By showing you this stuff? Does this mean I'm anti-Semitic? And I'm just telling you what went on, and I'm telling you that these guys are lying to you. Ben Shapiro. He wrote this article in 2005. Why war in Iraq is right for America. And you go through and you read this, he's giving all the explanations why the war in Iraq was right for America. Is it right for Israel too? Is it right for Israel too, Ben Shapiro? Because there are a lot of people from Israel over here telling us it was right for us, namely Benjamin Netanyahu. So I got some more clips from Ben Shapiro talking about, I love that he says, young people, they're just not, they have this grievance, they're just not working hard enough, they're not doing the right things. But if you work hard enough, you can do the right things, you're going to be able to own a home and have a family. You're just not working hard enough, is what he says. And then he says this, I got this clip. Where's Ben? Here.
And let's be real about this. It's insane that we haven't raised the retirement age in the United States. It's totally crazy. Joe Biden, if that were the case, Joe Biden should not be running for president. Hey, Joe Biden is 81 years old.
Yeah.
The retirement age in the United
I love
States,
this clip because Joe Biden shouldn't have been running for president, bro. Joe Biden didn't even make it through. This is before Joe Biden had to drop out. He's making the case that we need to raise the retirement age. We need to raise the retirement age. If, Joe Biden shouldn't be running for president if hey, Joe Biden, 81 years old. You can't retire at 81 years old, Ben? He says here in this clip that nobody should ever retire. That you're not working hard enough. You have this grievance because, you think that there's some shadowy group, influencing our foreign policy and controlling everything, which is true. Just showed you that. But you're not working hard enough. You're not doing the right things. If you do that, you'll be able to get one of those 50-year mortgages and never retire.
And let's be real about this. It's insane that we haven't raised the retirement age in the United States. It's totally crazy. Joe Biden, if that were the case, Joe Biden should not be running for president. Hey, Joe Biden is 81 years old. The retirement age in the United States at which you start to receive Social Security and you are eligible for Medicare is 65. Joe Biden has technically been eligible for Social Security and Medicare for 16 years, and he wants to continue in office until he is 86, which is 19 years past when he would be eligible for retirement. No one in the United States should be retiring at 65 years old. Frankly, I think retirement itself is a stupid idea unless you have some sort of health problem.
Retirement's stupid. No one should be retiring. No one should be retiring. Here's some more of the, brilliant wisdom from Ben Shapiro. Take a listen.
If you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up. But the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities.
Yeah. If they've flooded the place where you live with immigrants, and you can't afford to live there anymore, just leave. Leave your home. Leave, the place, your ancestral homeland. Leave. Mark Levin has been a major opponent of the opponent of Tucker Carlson in general, but he's been highly critical. One of these people who have been highly critical as of late of the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes. And he's trying to make it all about the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes. This has nothing to do with the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes, and I'm getting ready to show that to you. But I just want to start with this clip. This clip is a recent clip of Mark Levin that went viral from this weekend, and he says this.
This is our country. We're celebrating our country. Every July 4th, we're celebrating the principles that undergird our country. If you reject Judaism and you reject Christianity and you reject the link of the two, you reject the Bible. If you reject Judaism and Christianity and the brotherhood and the sisterhood of the two, not only are you rejecting our founding, you're rejecting our country.
So basically what he's saying, and this is very crafty, and all of them are doing this. They're saying that if you have a problem with the nation of Israel and the nation of Israel having influence on our foreign policy and our domestic policy and the lobbying from the nation of Israel in our Congress and on our policymakers, if you have a problem with that, then you're against Judaism and you're against the union that Judaism has with Christianity. And by proxy, or not by proxy, by guilt by association, that if you have this a criticism of Judaism, then you're criticizing Christianity too. They were trying to criticize Tucker Carlson and saying that he was criticizing Christians and that he hates Christians because he said that he hated Christian Zionists or something like that. And they tried to use it to say you're attacking Judaism and Christianity linked together. We're linked together. The Jews and Christians are linked together. And if you don't, agree with Israel's foreign policy and Israel's influence on our foreign policy, then you're against Judaism. Just the most idiotic thing. These people are crashing out so hard right now. So hard. And Mark Levin came out also this weekend, and he released the text messages that Tucker Carlson sent him. And Tucker Carlson was telling him that Turning Point, they have this annual event that they do in Scottsdale. It's their major annual event, and Tucker Carlson will be there. He's invited by TP USA to be the keynote speaker, I believe. Keynote speaker, Tucker Carlson. This is what the huge fight is. Because these guys, the Mark Levin, the Ben Shapiro's, the Josh Hammers, they don't want Tucker Carlson to have anything to do with TPUSA, and they want Turning Point to basically disassociate themselves with Tucker Carlson. But no, they're not disassociating themselves with Tucker Carlson. Charlie Kirk liked Tucker Carlson, and Charlie Kirk wanted Tucker Carlson to speak at this event. This is their major annual event. So Mark Levin, he came out this weekend and he read text messages that Tucker Carlson sent him that said, here, we'll listen to what the text message says here.
I got a very strange text this morning from Tucker Carlson, 10:16 a.m. I'll read it to you for verbatim. Good morning, he writes to me. The leadership at Turning Point has asked me to debate you at their event in Scottsdale in December. I'm happy to do it, and I hope you'll agree as well. Beyond the personal insults, which I'll try to keep to a minimum, there are real and important ideological differences between us, and I think the country would benefit from an extended conversation about them. So again, I hope you'll accept. Let me know. Thanks. The guy is desperate.
He's desperate.
He's taking a hit on his podcast.
He's desperate. He's taking a hit on his podcast. Tucker's got nearly 5 million followers on his YouTube page, and then 16 million people follow this guy on X, and he's taking a hit. That's what he says. That he's losing viewers.
Hope you'll accept. Let me know. Thanks. The guy is desperate. He's taking a hit on his podcast. He's fighting like hell for his career. He's fighting like hell for his reputation.
None of which is true.
People are awakening to what scum he actually is. And he thinks I'm going to platform him?
Platform him. Mark Levin says that he don't want to platform Tucker Carlson, who, again, has almost 5 million subscribers on his YouTube page. 16 million people following him on X, where he puts out all of his content. Platform him. Mark Levin doesn't want to platform him.
People are awakening to what scum he actually is. And he thinks I'm going to platform him? He thinks I'm going to help him kick up his podcast ratings? What would Charlie say? What would Rush say?
What would Charlie say? What would Charlie say? Well, Charlie's the one who, his organization is the one who's invited Tucker Carlson to their annual event to be the keynote speaker. Charlie went everywhere to debate everybody. He went to Oxford. He went to the colleges. He did not shy away from debate from anyone. So asking what Charlie would say, Charlie would debate. That's what he would do. He wouldn't be making nonsense statements about, I don't want to platform him. Guy's got 15 million subscribers on YouTube and 16 million followers on X. He's platforming you, fool.
And he thinks I'm going to platform him? He thinks I'm going to help him kick up his podcast ratings? What would Charlie say? What would Rush say? What would any rational response? Here it is.
So basically, here, I want you to listen to this part because this is
I wrote him the following. My family and I want nothing to do with you. What you've become, your vile libels against my faith, millions of Christians, and in my view, what you seek to do to our country. There's nothing to debate. You're a Nazi promoter. You're the modern-day David Duke. I debate people with whom I disagree for a living, who are a lot smarter than you, but for whom I have some respect. I'm also disappointed in TPUSA that continues to platform you.
Platform.
It's not about free speech. You can be heard by millions regardless. Some unsolicited advice. Stop long enough to remember who you used to be and what you used to stand for.
That gets to the heart of everything. Stop for long enough. This is what Mark Levin says here, because this gets to the heart of everything. Stop and remember who you used to be and what you used to stand for. What did Tucker Carlson used to be and what did Tucker Carlson used to stand for? Tucker Carlson used to support the Iraq war. Tucker Carlson used to shut down anyone who said that 9/11 was an inside job and 9/11 was a hoax. Now Tucker Carlson is making videos exposing 9/11. He's making not videos, documentaries. If you haven't seen Tucker Carlson's documentary exposing 9/11,
the 9/11 Commission failed to fulfill the single task it was charged with, explaining how 9/11 happened and why. Instead, it lied. But the 9/11 Commission...
So Tucker Carlson used to be who you used to be. This guy used to be someone, when he had the bow tie, who would jump down anyone's throat who ever gave even the slightest accusation that the official 9/11 story wasn't true and that Al-Qaeda pulled it off. Now this guy is making documentaries like this. So Mark Levin is saying, remember who you used to be. Well, this is who Tucker Carlson used to be. He used to be someone who supported all of this. He supported the war on terrorism. He supported the invasion of Iraq. I want you to listen to Tucker Carlson here on a podcast that he did about a year ago, or this was 2023. Take a listen.
Like, I've spent my whole life in the media. My dad was in the media. Like, that is a big part of the revelation that's changed my life, is the media are part of the control apparatus. Like, there's no, yeah, I know, because you're younger and smarter and you're like, yeah. But what if you're me and you spent your whole life in that world, and to look around and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. Not only are they part of the problem, but I spent most of my life being part of the problem, defending the Iraq war. Like, I actually did that. Can you imagine if you did that?
Well, what do you think? What is one of your biggest regrets in your career?
Oh, defending the Iraq war.
That is it?
Well, I've had a million regrets.
My biggest regret in my career was defending the Iraq war. My biggest regret is being who I used to be. Someone who defended the Iraq war. Someone who wouldn't even let people debate the facts around 9/11, in my face. And now I'm making documentaries exposing 9/11. And Mark Levin says, remember who you used to be. You should go back to who you used to be. I'm not going to debate you. Go back to who you used to be is what Mark Levin says.
But for whom I have some respect. I'm also disappointed in TPUSA that continues to platform you. It's not about free speech. You can be heard by millions regardless. Some unsolicited advice. Stop long enough to remember who you used to be and what you used to stand for.
Yeah. Go back to what you used to be, Tucker, and what you used to stand for is what Mark Levin says. Now, this feud between, now I'm going to show you why this has nothing to do with the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes. And I was really hoping that I was going to be able to get to some of the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes, because there's some gems in there. And picked this up on Friday, and I'll probably get right into those gems in the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes. But this has nothing to do with the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes. It has more to do with what you just heard Mark Levin say, and the fact that Tucker Carlson is no longer who he used to be. That's what this issue is about. And evidence that this has nothing to do with the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes is this clip. This is a clip from The Hill, and they are doing a report about the feud. What's the title of this clip? Or it says right here, Tucker Carlson, Mark Levin get into heated debate over war with Iran. Let me read that again. Title of this clip. Tucker Carlson and Mike Levin get into heated debate over war with Iran. When did this come out? June 6th. Like 7 months ago. Or 5 months ago. Almost 6 months ago. This clip. This has been going on for at least 6 months, and it even predates this June 6th report. But I just want you to listen to this June 6th report, because they lay out everything. And this is Tucker Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes 2 weeks ago. This was going on 5 months ago. Take a listen.
It's safe to say the simmering feud between conservative powerhouses Tucker Carlson and Mark Levin has reached its boiling point.
Carlson
it reached its this feud between Tucker Carlson and Mark Levin reached its boiling point in June. In June, this has nothing to do with the interview that he did with Nick Fuentes. This has been festering and going on. And Tucker Carlson says, let's finally meet at this event in Scottsdale, and let's hash this out. We've been going back and forth for months now. Me and you, Mark Levin, Tucker Carlson, since June at least. It reached the boiling point.
It's safe to say the simmering feud between conservative powerhouses Tucker Carlson and Mark Levin has reached its boiling point.
Carlson ignited the latest exchange after writing a lengthy X post targeted at Levin. Carlson accused Levin of lobbying for war with Iran and hyperventilating about weapons of mass destruction in Iran. He continued, quote, "The one thing that people like Mark Levin don't want is a peaceful solution to the problem of Iran, despite the obvious benefits to the United States. They denounce anyone who advocates for a deal as a traitor and a bigot. They tell us with a straight face that Long Island native Steve Witkoff is a secret tool of Islamic monarchies. They'll say or do whatever it takes. They have no limits. These are scary people. Pray that Donald Trump ignores them."
Of course, Levin hit back. He wrote on X, "He burps again." Yes, I know, Carlson has become a loathsome who's increasingly unhinged and pathetic. Our nation's enemies love him, as do certain vile and weird conspiracy theorists he promotes. After Levin called Carlson barely literate and utterly incoherent, he ended his post with, "But the good news is, the more he talks and writes, the less relevant and more poisonous he becomes." So, Amber, you're in the Conservative seat. You have a greater knowledge of these people than I do, to the point of clarifying something which I always get wrong, which is the pronunciation of Mark Levin's last name. But what do you think of this intra-Conservative battle?
Yeah, I think not super surprising. Mark Levin has been a very aggressively pro-Israel Zionist voice in the conservative movement and is generally much more hawkish than sort of the new right, more anti-interventionist wing of the party, which Tucker Carlson is a part of. He's very skeptical of new wars. He wants peace in the Middle East, at least through the attempt to negotiate some kind of deal with Iran. He is not overly supportive of the U.S.'s alignment with Israel, in the sense that he doesn't want endless funding of Israel. He would like them to be independent if possible. Not a huge fan of Palestine and Hamas either, but recognizes the need for negotiation in these conflicts. Whereas Levin has been very vocal on his social media and allegedly in lobbying to the White House that they should side with Israel and have some kind of military action against Iran, which I think broadly the Republican Party has signaled deep skepticism toward.
Yeah, and I think rightly so. Levin's stance on this is very akin to the stance of John Bolton, who seems to have wanted to attack Iran for pretty much my lifetime, as far as I can tell, you know.
He never met a war he didn't like.
He really
John
hasn't,
Bolton.
and particularly he has constant pretexts that would justify an attack on Iran. And I do think here, you know, Tucker Carlson, I disagree with on 99 things out of 100, but I think that he makes a very legitimate point about excessive belligerence and bellicosity and the dangers of those things. Just on a broader point about the Israel and the Palestinians question, I have been interested, Amber, my views on that conflict are fairly familiar to viewers of this show, but it's interesting to me not only the kind of Tucker Carlsons of the world, but I saw recently Theo Vaughn give a very sort of emotional reaction where he made clear that he did not consider himself some policy expert on the Middle East, but that he had massive problems just on a human level about what's happening there. And I think that the breaking down of a sort of rigid ideological line on that situation is welcome.
I think a huge part of it is the sort of decaying grip of the evangelicals on the Republican Party in terms of foreign policy. A lot of the explanation for America's undying loyalty to Israel has been
6
from
months
that
ago
group because of their belief in the Third Temple and the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Listen to what she says here. This is a report from 6 months ago. She's talking about the erosion of evangelicals and their eschatology and the need for the building of the Third Temple. Listen to what she says 6 months ago.
On the Republican Party in terms of foreign policy. A lot of the explanation for America's undying loyalty to Israel has been from that group because of their belief in the Third Temple and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You now have a greater Catholic contingent in the Republican Party. You have a lot more secular people in the Republican Party who don't have that underlying religious reason for support of Israel and are looking at this through the lens of, well, how does this benefit America's interest rather than my personal religious interest? And they can't come up with a really great explanation for why that is.
This report is from 6 months ago, people, 6 months ago. And she's laying it all out. And this has been festering. This isn't just happened because Tucker Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes is ridiculous. These people are being ridiculous, and now they're trying to cancel Tucker Carlson. They want him, the TPUSA to disassociate themselves. And this is all people. We'll pick this back up on Friday. Hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.